Transatlantic ties in trouble. The German chancellor fires a warning shot. She can no longer completely count on her U.S. partners. Where does Germany and Europe turn now? I'm Sarah Kelly in Berlin. This is The Day.
We travel the world to strengthen long-standing alliances.
The times when we could completely count on others are over to a certain extent.
It's no great skill to complain about Donald Trump in a beer tent.
And that's why I can only say that we Europeans must really take our fate into our own hands.
She only finds the courage of her convictions when Trump's far away.
At this summit, we saw that the American president is no longer willing to cooperate on topics that Europe believes in.
And I reject with outrage the way this man takes it upon himself to treat the head of our country's government. That is unacceptable.
Do you notice how much stronger we're getting? Have you feeling it? Are you feeling it?
The alarm bells have sounded. One of the world's strongest alliances is in jeopardy. German Chancellor Angela Merkel says that Europe can no longer rely on partners like the United States. And her foreign minister has gone even further, describing Donald Trump's policies as short-sighted and weakening the West. Now, these words signal a significant change in relations between Europe and Washington, following a G7 summit at which President Trump refused to endorse the Paris Climate Accord. So, where does Europe turn now? And why has Merkel chosen to air her frustrations at a beer hall in Bavaria? Our chief political correspondent will answer those questions in just a moment. First, a closer look at the tensions rattling the post-World War II order.
It seems even chancellors might need a cold beer every now and then. Angela Merkel back home after challenging and tense times at back-to-back NATO and G7 summits. Campaigning in Munich, Merkel warned she'd come to some tough realisations in the last few days, saying Europe may not be able to count on its traditional alliances of the past.
The times when we could completely count on others, they are over to a certain extent. I have experienced this in the last few days. That is why I can only say that we Europeans must take our fate into our own hands, of course in friendship with the United States of America.
The G7 summit in Italy ended with extraordinary division. US President Donald Trump, the only leader refusing to endorse the 2015 Paris Climate Change Accord, something Merkel described as very unsatisfactory. The group was more united on trade, though, saving face by managing to get Trump on board in a pledge to fight protectionism.
But 23 of the 28 member nations are still not paying what they should be paying and what they are supposed to be paying.
On Thursday, Trump publicly scolded NATO allies in Brussels for not spending enough on defence. And he's said to have taken aim at Germany's large trade surplus with the US, reportedly describing German trade practices as bad, very bad. Merkel's rival for Chancellor in September's national elections reacted angrily to the comments. Election campaign or no election campaign, in this situation, let me be entirely clear. The Chancellor represents all of us at summits like these, and I reject with outrage the way this man takes it upon himself to treat the head of our country's government. That is unacceptable. Clearly, for Merkel, a somewhat friendlier message for the Chancellor as she tries to move on from what's been a frustrating week.
Let's get more. We are joined by our chief political correspondent, Melinda Crane. Melinda, Merkel, of course, known ever as the strategist. She's often very calculated in terms of what she says. What do you think that she hopes to achieve by airing her frustrations in public in this way?
You're right. She absolutely does choose her words. She tends to be very consistent in her pronouncements. So I think she is sending a very clear message here. And I think it has two components. One is deep disappointment she had really been biding her time. She had been pretty restrained, including after her meeting in Washington with President Trump when there was a whole handshaking incident. And really, she tried to convey the fact that she thought the glass was half full. And clearly, this G7 summit marked a kind of turning point for her. Why? I think it has everything to do with the fact that Germany will be hosting the G20 summit in this summer in July. And I think she had really been hoping that through some kind of pragmatic diplomatic process, she might be able to bring Donald Trump along. And we can think back to the time that Germany hosted the G8 summit during George Bush's presidency, when George Bush, who was known to be a very strong opponent of the idea of climate change, actually listened to her persuasion and agreed at the G8 summit to a final communique that did refer to climate change. That was viewed as a major victory for the chancellor at that time. So my sense is that here, she is truly deeply frustrated that she hasn't been able to achieve that kind of result. And she's sending a message not only of disappointment, but also a warning saying, this is very serious stuff. This will have a major impact on relations between the U.S. and Germany and the U.S. and Europe. And I think in a way, she's essentially resorting to public diplomatic channels because the normal process of diplomacy isn't getting her where she wants to go.
Yeah, and speaking about normal processes, there's also an election coming up in Germany this September. Surely her comments, though, must also have something to do with that as well, right?
There's undoubtedly an element of that. She was speaking on Sunday in a beer tent at a campaign rally in front of an audience that is known to be receptive to conservative populism. But the fact is, if this were pure election tactics, it wouldn't really be that effective in terms of differentiating her from her rival, because you heard him there in that report saying he's absolutely with the chancellor on this one. And that's true of the entire SPD leadership. And by the way, she also repeated and defended her statements at a much drier gathering here in Berlin today. So I think it goes way beyond electioneering.
So more broadly speaking, what is next for Europe then, if it has to rely more on itself?
We're hearing German leaders, and not only German leaders, saying, look, this is a clear sign that Europe needs to get its act together and pull closer together in terms of foreign and military and defense policy, as well as just an economic. It's taking steps. There's been years of talk about a stronger European military initiative, a real military force, combining procurement, trying to get more rational funding procedures and so on in place. There have been steps to that end. They are small steps. They will take time. We are not going to see the EU emerge as an alternative to NATO anytime soon.
Our chief political correspondent, Melinda Crane, putting it all into perspective for us. Thank you.